I'm so pumped to have this conversation because this is something, that I want to focus on more with the podcast of bringing in like professionals in the field and having these conversations. But B, this is a topic that I have a lot of personal questions about and I'm very interested in. And then my community showed the F up in my question box when I said that I was going to have someone on to talk about this.
Good to know.
So Jaclyn, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I should also say this is like, I guess the third episode of like an FFAM member, which I want to continue to do specifically in these like professional fields because my community has so many amazing people in it. And I get such great words of wisdom, like tips, little nuggets of knowledge in my DMs from all of these incredible professionals that I want to share with the community. Because I'm like, let's dive deeper with the people who are part of this community and know real specific details and have been educated in these fields. So let's chat about secure attachment.
Let's do it.
I guess like first and foremost, can you lay out your credentials so that everyone knows what's happening here and like why you're here to talk about this?
Yes, for sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm from Canada, so I'm registered with the College of Psychologists of Ontario. And I did my PhD on mother-infant attachment.
And what is mother-infant attachment? Like, is there a definition for this?
Yes, so that's a great question. And attachment is just thrown out. I feel like it's everywhere now. And it has lost meaning. Mm-hmm. But really, when we're talking about parent-infant attachment, we're talking about like John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, who were the two kind of pioneers of the term in the 1950s. So Bowlby studied these like kids reared in orphanages without parents, and they didn't have a consistent caregiver, but they were given everything they needed, like food, comfort, like playtime, whatever. It was like reasonable conditions, but no primary caregiver. And unfortunately, a lot of these kids died or they did not develop well emotionally, and they had all sorts of behavior problems moving forward. So Bowlby kind of concluded we need a strong emotional bond with a primary caregiver, with someone who's got our back in order to not just thrive, but survive. And so he worked with Mary Ainsworth, and they kind of developed this concept that because through evolution, we as humans, and this is across cultures, it's just us as humans, we need a caregiver to develop a strong emotional bond with, an attachment with. Okay. And that's where attachment came from. And Mary Ainsworth developed this procedure to look at the quality of attachment. It's called the strange situation procedure. And so essentially what it is a parent will take their baby to a strange room and repeatedly leave them with a stranger, leave them alone in the room, and then you like look at the reaction of the baby. So Mary Ainsworth developed that procedure to really look at the infant's reaction to their mom leaving and reaction to coming back. I say mom, this applies to any caregiver. Mom is just kind of the most common one still. To be the primary caregiver. So she developed these different attachment styles that we hear all about now that's kind of lost their meaning almost because there's so many myths about them really. But it originated from this strange situation procedure. And so a secure attachment, the ideal attachment between a parent and their child may or may not be upset visibly when they leave, but when they come back, they're either gonna run to them for comfort and be comforted by them, or they'll just shoot them a smile, a look, and then continue to play. Both of those are secure.
Okay. What are can we go through? There are 4, right?
There's 4.
Okay.
So yeah, we can go through
secure. And then I'll ask all my questions.
Sounds good. So avoidant is one type of insecure. So they are typically ones who look like they don't care when the mom leaves the room, and when the mom comes back, they still look like they don't care. No greeting. Sometimes an infant will initially present like that, and then when you do a second separation, that little strategy breaks down and they run and they give their mom a hug, and now they're considered secure. So it has to be kind of an enduring that's their pattern. So then there's resistant or ambivalent attachment. These kids, even before the mom leaves, sometimes they have trouble exploring. They'll cling to the mom. A stranger comes in the room. They're too wary. They don't explore. They're just preoccupied with their parent. Understandably, then the parent leaves and they lose it.
Yep.
And then the parent comes back. That should be the end of their distress, right? They're upset that the parent left. The parent comes back. Great. But it's not great for them. They're still crying. They can't be comforted. They might kick or hit. So that's not secure. And then the last one is disorganized. So often we see disorganized attachment in like samples where, and I say sample, like research samples of kids who are abused or have been abused, parents with histories of significant trauma, significant mental health challenges. That's where this is more overrepresented. And in disorganized attachment, usually in the general population, it's pretty rare. But the kid is almost like frightened of their caregiver. So it's their caregiver should be their source of comfort, not their source of fear. But these kids show kind of odd behaviors in the strange situation. So they might kind of run to their parent and then divert and turn the other way. They might freeze. They might stare at the wall for an extended period of time. This isn't normal for an infant. They're really engaged in the moment usually.
Yeah. What age are these kids in these like strange scenarios?
So usually like in the standard one, it's like 12 to 18 months old. So we're talking about like late infancy, early toddlerhood, but you can also do it. Like I've seen it done all the way into like middle childhood. You can you modify it obviously.
And this might be a dumb question, but I know that these case studies happened as part of research back then, but like, in today's world, are these like why would you do said test?
Yes, so that's a great question. So it's done very frequently. This is the gold standard way to assess attachment in research. Okay. So in research, we can use this to look at the impact of parenting on child development. So like my research, for example, looked at the impact of this on like cortisol secretion, the stress hormone patterns in the mom, the kid. We look at genes. Are genes predicting attachment? Do they interact with how the mom behaves or the mom's mental health to predict attachment? And then what are the long-term outcomes of this? So all around the world, this procedure by Mary Ainsworth in like, I think she developed it 50s or 70s. I can't remember, but it's very old and it's still used so frequently now. And that's where a lot of our knowledge about the impact of parenting comes from is like this procedure.
Okay. So it's mainly being done right now or exclusively being done for research?
Yes. And researchers now are moving it to the clinical world in different ways, usually through different approaches, like modified strange situation procedures where you can use it to intervene, to show parents, look, this is what's going wrong. This is where your child's cueing you for support, cueing their needs, and this is where they miscue. So it is used in therapy contexts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how do we, of course, everyone wants to have that secure attachment. So obviously there are there are many factors that go into this, but like what's controllable versus out of our control?
So one important thing to remember is like we all already have the tools we need to have a secure attachment. Okay. Like it's in there. There's now all over the internet, all these parenting approaches. They're like 10 steps to a secure attachment. And now give me your money and you can sign up for my parenting course or whatever. It's everywhere. It's almost like diet culture, but like parent culture. Like follow this diet, honestly, you'll lose weight.
Yes. I mean, yeah, the shame, the guilt, the using guilt as a selling tactic. Parenting on the internet is a conversation that I want to get into at some point in this conversation. But I agree. I think that a lot of people are tossing around like almost trigger words to be like, come buy this or come do this or you have to do it this way or otherwise you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. And inherent in that is the assumption that like you have to be a perfect parent.
Yes.
If you're not striving for perfection, then you don't care enough. You're bad. and your kid, how your kid turns out is a reflection of you as a parent.
Yeah.
And it's just not true. We all have what we need to have a secure relationship with our kid already. We don't need these million different parenting approaches that they're trying to sell us. And hopefully in this conversation we can talk about what we do need. But they're very shame-based. And so what that leads to, if there's one mistake you can make in being a parent, it's trying to be the perfect parent. You literally don't need that. It's like over 60% of parent-infant dyads have that secure attachment. So like statistically, you probably do.
And how, I guess, like, what are the things that encourage a secure attachment? Tangible things that, like, yes, we all have it inherently in us, but what are tangible things that we not should, but can do to encourage that attachment?
Yes. So you will never hear me tell you, say this script and you'll get a secure attachment. Do this thing and you will. There are many different styles of parenting that lead to a secure attachment. And in fact, there's like, when you look at the actual research literature, there's so many different parenting approaches studied, and they only moderately relate to each other and moderately relate to attachment. The biggest, most consistent predictor of child attachment is actually maternal mental health, maternal depressive symptoms. So like, it's basically like, take care of yourself and a few other things, and then your kid is probably just going to be nice and securely attached to you.
Okay. Now I'm trying to decide if I want to, let's stay on this route for a second before we get into maternal mental health.
Okay.
In terms of attachment.
Yes.
You've referenced like a lot of things get thrown around. This word gets tossed around a lot. How much of an impact and this was absolutely hands down the number one question that was submitted. Can we talk about the effect of sleep training, breastfeeding, and like daycare / nanny on attachment? Because I think, I obviously don't know the research on these things, but sleep training being one, I know people feel very strongly about either side. I am very, you do whatever the fuck works for you. Same with breastfeeding. Like, I breastfed my first son for 5 months. Our second, we cut it at 8 weeks because it wasn't serving us. And daycare / nanny, again, it's like you have to do what works for your family. So how much of an actual impact has it been studied? Are these three things, for example, impacting actual attachment?
Yes. So before I directly answer those questions, and there is research on them, and there's clear answers, I think it's important to understand what a secure attachment is. What are the components, and what should we keep in our minds to foster that? And then that's naturally going to answer those questions. So kids have two primary needs. We do actually also as adults. And they are the need for connection and security, comfort, and then the second one is independence and exploration. So we see this everywhere. We see it at the park with our kids. We see it at home. I was just working with a patient who was worried and concerned about a couple things. So they had two, I'll use this as an example, but basically to meet the exploratory needs, your kids are going to tell you what they need. And so what this person said was like, her kid was her young toddler was like trying to get dressed, trying to put the pants on, was getting very frustrated. They weren't the right way. And then she reached in and helped put the pants on. And the toddler said, no, I want to do it myself. So that's an example.
Right.
Yeah. Me do it is what we hear a lot. And so that's them asserting their need for that independence, for that exploration. And so in that case, she got in the way of that by accident, as we all do. So then she just said, sorry, didn't mean to, you do it. Then the toddler did it. They were happy, continued running around the house. So that is her actually repairing that. So when it comes to attachment, we talk a lot about rupture and repair. Whoops, we made a mistake. Like literally we all make mistakes all the time. sorry, okay. So for her, she recognized the need in her child. Her child needed that independence to put on her pants. She said, whoops, I got in the way of that. You take that independence. Boom. That's how she met that need for her child.
Okay.
The other half is the connection, the security, the comfort seeking. We see a lot of this in like the, I don't know what to call it, like instead of diet culture, I'll call it parent culture world of all these like buy my parenting course things. They talk a lot about validating emotions. And I'm not telling anybody to not take that advice. Like wonderful to validate your child's emotions, but that's half of it. You also have to take charge when you need to, set boundaries, give them independence. So that all is on one side, and the other side of the coin is this connection, the validating emotions. Your kid comes home, they're really upset, and you're busy, and you're like, sorry, I'll be right there. And then they storm off. It's like, whoops, missed that. So then you go up and you repair. You say, sorry, I was busy before. Now tell me what's going on.
Yep.
So it's all about that rupture and repair. No one does it perfectly, but it's about behind the behavior, you're looking at the need. And that's attachment. It's about, okay, my kid is having a tantrum. What do I think the need is? Is it a need for independence or is it a need for connection? Whoops, I got the need wrong. So I'm going to repair it, say sorry, try again.
I have to say I love you saying sorry. Okay. And that's actually very helpful for me personally because when I'm in that scenario, I almost want that tangible piece of advice, like you just said, to be like, okay, what is actually the need that needs to be met here? Does he need me to just give him the space, like figure this out on his own? Or does he need me to be like, do you need like my kids are very comforted by physical touch. So do you just want to hug and like we can self-regulate kind of together? I don't know if this is the right terminology, but like you can take your deep breaths while you're in my arms and you'll be comforted and then we'll move on.
So that's actually called co-regulation. You as the adult
Is
are
that good or
regulating
bad?
their emotions. That's wonderful.
Okay.
That's half of the equation for secure attachment.
Sometimes I worry about codependency, but I think it's helpful to know, to like have something to return to almost in that moment of like, do they need independence or do they need to be comforted?
Yes.
So in terms of attachment, how do these things impact our attachment with our infants or children?
Yes. So it's all about recognizing the need, trusting that you are going to know what to do to meet those needs. And these terms, like you just said, codependence, they get thrown around so much. And so really what that's referring to, so everybody as parents, we have strength in meeting one of the needs and weakness in the other. And it's different for everyone. And so if a kid comes and has a need that is kind of on the weakness side, we get what Hoffman and his colleagues call shark music. You know when like a shark comes, it's like
Yeah.
where like something bad is happening.
Yeah.
You know, we're feeling uncomfortable, and then we're more likely to not respond well to that need. So for the way that I think codependency is often thrown around is that's referring to like an anxious or ambivalent or resistant attachment. So it's when a parent has strength in the bottom part of attachment, which is like the comfort, security kind of part, but they struggle with the independence, let's foster your exploration part.
Okay.
So if their kid, for example, is like going on a jungle gym, they get really nervous and they'll hover. They'll, just like that example of that person, they'll put the pants on the kid. They'll treat all these emotions that their child is showing as like the end of the world. Let me fix this emotion for you. So those are kinds of behaviors that would signify that parent is getting their shark music when their kid is showing that need for independence. On the flip side, for like an avoidant attachment kind of picture, the parent struggles more with that comfort or reassurance. So their kid is having a tantrum. It's hard for the parent to get to that need. They're like, have a snack, be quiet, which we all do sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Then it's about the repair, right? You say sorry, but I'm talking about the general pattern is like struggling to validate and regulate those emotions, but doing really well when their kid is out exploring. They can scaffold them. They can help them.
Yeah.
Take their kid to a new level in whatever task their kid's doing, but they struggle more with that comfort emotional side. And we all get shark music more with one side than the other. But to foster secure attachment, it's literally just about the awareness of those things, about the need for exploration, the need for connection, where our shark music is. And it's actually the state of mind, so your recognition of those things, that predicts a secure attachment more than what you actually do. Doesn't matter what you do.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So let's go to those 3 big questions. Sleep training.
Yeah.
Does that actually impact attachment?
So there is research on this, and there is no association in the literature that's consistent. Maybe someone will find one study that shows it, the odd study here and there. But when you look at the grand picture, the evidence is there. Like, please listen to me. Mm-hmm. If you need sleep and you want to go to sleep, sleep training works for that. Mm-hmm. Like, there are many reasons to do sleep training and to not do sleep training. Don't let your concern about your attachment with your kid be one of those reasons.
What about breastfeeding?
So it's similar. So when we think about what attachment actually is, it's about consistently, but not perfectly, meeting your child's needs for connection and independence through what you do. Having that state of mind where you recognize those things when you make mistakes, as we all do and as we all should, we repair and we go back and we think about the need and we try hard. We all have that desire to do well as parents. Mm-hmm. If we do that consistently, our kids are very likely going to be securely attached.
Whether they're on your
what is that? What does that have to do with breastfeeding? It literally has nothing to do with it.
No, I mean, I agree. Like, I feel a different connection to my children, and I don't know. I felt weird saying that at first, but then I'm also like, well, I've known my one kid for almost 3 years and my second for only 6 months. Like, of course, the relationship is different because you know one for longer. Especially in the beginning, it was like I really knew one for longer. But as it goes to this stage that they're in at this time, like, I breastfed my first for much longer, and I felt no difference in my connection.
Yeah.
Like, I felt a stronger connection to my second once I stopped breastfeeding, quite honestly, because feeding was causing so much discomfort for the two of us. And it was such a negative experience that it was negatively impacting our relationship. And, like, I will die on that hill that, like, there's no benefit from breastfeeding that outweighs the potential negative impact it may be having on you.
Yes.
If it's a negative experience, which it's not for many.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, breastfeeding, so obviously breastfeeding has great impacts on maternal health, on infant health, but those should be the reasons somebody chooses to do it. They shouldn't choose to do it to promote a secure attachment with their child, because again, I'm using attachment in terms of the evidence-based research on it, the peer-reviewed studies, what actually is attachment when we're talking about the predictive power of a secure attachment for almost every aspect of child development, for intelligence, academic achievement, relationships throughout life, their physical health, their mental health. Attachment predicts all these things. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. That attachment, that is not related to breastfeeding. And like, even in my study, like, we had hundreds of moms and their infants come in. We did attachment with the gold standard strange situation procedure. Not related. We asked every mom, are you breastfeeding? It's not related to that. And people, I feel like, and I'm sure you get this in like your comments, like people have such strong opinions.
Oh my God.
When it comes to these things.
I mean, about everything in terms of being a mom on the internet. It's really depressing, quite honestly, a lot of the times.
I bet.
But yeah, people have really strong opinions. And I wish what we could all do, and unfortunately I think the people who listen to this do this. It's more so the people who aren't going to listen to this, but whatever. Is like, I wish we could really get to a place where we understand people can have different experiences than you have. Like, we all can have our own experience. We all can have a different pregnancy. We can all have a different delivery story. We can all have a different postpartum experience. We can all have a different breastfeeding experience. Like, of course, it's so obvious, in my opinion, that like we're not all going to have the same lived experience. But I think what's so lost on so many is that there is compassion for anyone having a different experience. And it doesn't have to be the same as yours.
Yeah.
And like, how great is that? So, yes, my last one with attachment and potential impact, a lot of people asked about a daycare or having a nanny, returning to work. Like, what does that have an impact on attachment? Because some people said, like, I fear that my child, my baby is becoming more attached to the nanny than me. Or I'm working myself up and I'm so anxious about taking my kid to daycare because I'm worried it's going to impact our attachment. Is that is there truth in that fear, or is that almost like a mom guilt spiral that we're all kind of sending ourselves into?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question. And I think that fear comes from a very real place of this, as I said, this background in research, how we came to formulating attachment was kids in these orphanages, right? It's orphanages, it's also kids who have prolonged separation from their caregivers. Like if they're in the hospital for a long period of time, like way back then, they would have like a half an hour visiting period with their parents and the rest they're alone. And then the kid was very impacted in terms of how they responded to their caregiver. As I said, the kids in orphanages who didn't have a primary caregiver, they died, even though they were given everything they need. So attachment is very core. And I think it gets misinterpreted to then be like, oh, don't leave your kid. It's very important to be with them at all times. Daycare is harmful. All these things that people throw around, but I think they have good intentions, but I think they're misinterpreting the literature, right? You're not going anywhere when you send your kid to daycare. You're going to be there at the end of the day, most days. You're going to still be their primary caregiver. Your kid's with a nanny, you're still there. And I think a lot of the time this need to never be separated from a kid, it comes with the difficulty with that one half of attachment needs. So the independence, the exploration, right? You're getting shark music there. You're saying, I better stay near my kid. I'm going to ruin the attachment. That's what your shark music is telling you. So what do? Maybe you cancel the daycare. Maybe you don't go through with it. Maybe you hover over the nanny. Maybe you don't let the nanny do things that you want to let them do. What does that do? This is the pursuit of perfect parenting. It's the one mistake that you could make as a parent. Your attachment will be just fine if you are consistently there. It's not even about responding to their needs well most of the time. It's just consistently. So when the researchers look, like we have like looked at, and this isn't just like in my lab, but across the board, across the world, people have analyzed maternal behavior to a T. You watch and rewatch videos of moms interacting with their babies and you judge them to no other for the purpose of research. Yep. And what did they find? They found that parents who are in secure attachment relationships with their kid, they would get a score of like 40% on that test, if we call it a test. They responded well to their kids' cues 40% of the time. So if 40% is our A+, like we can all take a break. Let's just relax into parenting.
So nice to hear. On this note of like the shame and the idea of trying to be perfect and attachment in general, being there consistently, of course. I am a huge proponent of filling your own cup. And this gets into maternal mental health that I really want to focus on because I think that you said the best thing we can do is like be in a good state of mind.
Yeah.
What about, because I got torn on the internet by many for this, and I'm actually curious. I'm not even like, I want an honest answer.
Okay.
Leaving your child for 3 nights at 5 months old.
Yes. So, and I didn't mention this before, but attachment consolidates between 9 to 12 months of age. Okay. So, first of all, if you go away between 9 to 12 months of age, I still don't think that's going to impact your child's attachment in the long run. But when we're talking about 5 months, same with sleep training, this often happens at 5 months old. Your child is not developmentally at the stage where they're consolidating their attachment pattern to you. So have fun, go sleep train, or go away and get your sleep and come back refreshed. And then you can meet those two needs better.
Okay. Thank you so much. I mean, I really didn't feel, it's so interesting. I actually felt very confident doing it. I never once questioned it because it was like 5 months. Hey, I just feel very secure in my relationship with my children. And also we have the village of our parents that I always try to also remind myself of, like, this is such a great opportunity for them to bond and it's so fun for them. My toddler loves his grandparents, whatever. And then I'm not going to lie, after getting torn on the internet, part of my brain was like, am I fucked? Like, was that wrong? My therapist was like, what are you even talking about? But I wanted to bring it up with you because this is your field. So
and again,
so much.
We're talking about consistently meeting your child's needs of independence and connection. That literally has nothing to do with going on a 3-night trip. It doesn't. You come back, oh, there you are, Mom. Now you're responding to my needs again. So it doesn't. It's not. It's this parent culture, these people who want to either sell you their parenting approach or they want validation for what they do.
Yeah, or
which is fair.
Angry.
But yeah, or they're angry.
Okay. So how or does child attachment change as the child ages?
So that's a wonderful question. So the two core needs don't. Even as adults, we have these needs. It shifts what we need to meet them. It shifts how we express them. But attachment is this working model of yourself within relationships that starts in infancy with a primary caregiver, but moves on to other things. So peers, teachers, summer camp counselors, romantic partners, and ultimately with your own kids. And so if you put, like, let's say you were in the strange situation with your mom as a kid, and then you put your kids there, it likely they would react the same way that you did with your mom. It's this intergenerational transmission of it, which is interesting. And we could talk about that if there's interest, but basically throughout your life, different relationships can shift your attachment patterns and your style, but it is change resistant. So it's hard to shift it, but it can shift. Okay. And so throughout life, there's this psychologist researcher who created this other way to measure attachment, and I like it because it is a lifespan measure. And so you can look at it from infancy to adolescence, and she focuses on the two core needs. And so basically, for the need for connection throughout life, it's different depending on your developmental stage, but she talks about the parent's sensitivity or their affect, their emotion in the interaction. Is the parent having fun with the kid? That's like the main thing for how she defines attachment. Are you enjoying your time with your kid? If you're not, you got to take care of yourself so you can enjoy it. And then there's hostility. Is the parent hostile? Is the parent bored, making mean comments? And, a one-off is fine, but if that's the flavor of the interaction, then no. And then there's non-intrusiveness, so not being intrusive, not taking over your kid's task, and structuring. Are you taking your kid to a higher level? Are you helping them succeed? Are you teaching them whatever activity you're doing? So you can imagine in infancy, those things look very different than childhood and adolescence, but the concepts remain the same. When we're talking about a parent and a child, it's the same needs. It's just for an adolescent, maybe you're doing their math homework with them. And so are you structuring them in that? Are you too intrusive in that? Are you having fun with them? I mean, to some degree, it's going to be boring. Right. You can't have like fake positive emotion. Like they will pick that up right away. But it's about, are you enjoying your interaction with them as an adolescent? Are you being hostile to them about their math homework? So it's really, we're looking at the same concepts as the child ages. It doesn't need to be this 10 steps to parenting your infant, 10 steps to parenting your adolescent. Just take those concepts and trust you don't and you shouldn't be a perfect parent. Okay. And just, when you make a mistake, just repair it. And that it teaches them about relationships about you as a human. You're not perfect. They're not perfect, but we come back together and it's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, literally just this morning, I had a complete meltdown myself, like freak out on myself. I dropped a pair of scissors on my foot and like the pointy side literally stabbed me and I was bleeding everywhere and I was rushing to catch the train. My toddler's calling for me. I'm making a smoothie. I poured the entire like mini blender unmixed into our freezer accidentally as I'm reaching for an ice cube. You know when your brain just like cross wires, and I just literally poured it in and I was like, motherfucker, screamed. And I beat myself up the entire train ride because I grew up in a very like fast-paced, anxious, real high emotions household, and that's not at all what I want our home to feel like. But unfortunately, that's my like resting state, especially in the mornings. I'm rushed. And so the entire train ride, I was beating myself up of being like, now this is how my kids are going to think. And my husband's like, can you take a deep breath? My girlfriends are like, it was one morning. Okay. You didn't fuck anyone up.
Yeah.
But we're so wired to think that like all they're going to remember are these small mistakes that we make. I don't know why we believe that, but we do. And I want to talk about what you said in terms of the generational stuff, because what do you do as a mom if you grew up with a insecure attachment style and that is what you were accustomed to? Like, are there tangible things to do to kind of fix that for the attachment style of you and your child?
Yes, so definitely. So, and I mean, I know a lot of people like, and that's why these things sell so well.
Right.
It's like these 10 steps, do this, and you'll have a secure attachment. But I hope that this conversation is bringing people confidence that they already have the tools they need. It's all about your state of mind, how you reflect on attachment, how you think about it. If you're someone already reflecting on, wow, you know, I want to do better. I don't want to have an insecure relationship with my kids. And you recognize your shark music. So, okay, like I had maybe an insecure, resistant relationship with my mom. So when it comes to my child's independence needs, that's where I get my shark music. Like literally just knowing that is really all you need to do.
Okay.
It's about the knowledge of attachment, the confidence in yourself that you know what's going to work for you and your family to meet that need, and to recognize your shark music. Oh, you know, I'm a little wary that my child's straying too far, but they're safe and I really should let them explore the jungle gym. So I'm going to work really hard to hold myself back and not hover because I know that this is my intergenerational shark music. Like that's enough to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually my shark music right there.
Okay.
Like, absolutely. I mean, I am very close with my mother. We have an amazing relationship, but she definitely is a little bit have a helicopter. And so for me, I think that's what I've always been accustomed to, but also like the physical act, I have a lot of intrusive thoughts around like falling, the jungle gyms especially. I'm like, who the fuck designed these things? Who designed them? Like, why are there like death leaps every time you turn around? There's just this huge hole 3 floors up for you to fall off of. But I'm constantly working on like sometimes even sitting on my hands, also with patience of like letting them do something. I'm like, sit on your goddamn hands and let him figure it out. Like, do not intervene and help him crack that egg in the bowl. If it goes everywhere, we just get a new fucking egg. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's so hard. One other thing in terms of attachment, you mentioned that the mom has been like the case study.
Yeah.
But how do we encourage attachment with the non-birthing parent? Because this is something that I know my husband and I experienced with our first more so, where like I felt that instant attachment and he was definitely more prone to like seek comfort in me. And honestly, it's hard. I talk about it with a lot of my friends where maybe you're the default quote unquote or the preferred parent for comfort, or you're not. Like both sides are hard because if it's deeply swayed one way, if you're the preferred comfort parent, it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
And if you're not, it can hurt your feelings. Like now our toddler completely bounces back. It's honestly whoever wakes him up in the morning, that's the preferred parent for the day. where that's kind of nice because every once in a while it's like, okay, it's not always me and I'm not hurt because maybe tomorrow it will be me. But when it's really heavily one-sided, I think it can be really difficult for both people involved. Like, how do we encourage, or what can you do to foster that attachment with a non-birthing parent? And I say dad because I'm in a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah. So they will be attached to the other parent. Like, we're not talking here. The exception is like when kids are apprehended by Children's Aid, when they're in foster care, then they develop kind of attachment disorders. So we're not talking about those kids right now.
Okay.
But assuming that, you know, it's consistent caregivers for them, they will. Like, as humans, we attach to our caregivers. So they will be attached to both. I think what we're talking about is in terms of fostering a secure attachment relationship, it's the same concepts. Okay. What is the need underlying this behavior? And so when both parents have that in mind, then that's going to foster the secure attachment with both. What can sometimes happen, and a lot of my patients will come to me about this, is they talk about how they're struggling, just as you were saying, when this dynamic happens.
It's hard.
It's so hard. So you're the preferred parent and you have this like resentment to your kid, to your partner. First of all, that's so normal. And like, if we try to deny resentment and say, oh, we feel perfect, we're so happy all the time, that is worse for attachment than like just acknowledge it. There's resentment. We have conflicting feelings to our babies, to our partners. It's so normal. And the majority of us have secure relationships anyways. But back to that. So it's about, think about your shark music. Where is it coming in? Is it saying like, is it not letting you take a break? Is it not letting you say what you need? Is it getting in the way of that because you feel like you have to perfectly meet your child's needs right now when they're picking you? And for the other parent, it's like, what's getting in the way for you to step up? Is it thoughts that you can't do a good enough job as the other parent? Is it thoughts that your kid is rejecting you?
I think that's what it is for a lot of people. The like, and it's not that it's, not to cut you off, it's not that it's like stopping them from stepping up. But I mean, I think my husband would be comfortable with me sharing this. Like it was like he felt hurt because he's like, I just feel like our son picks you all the time. And this was when he was maybe like a year. He's like, I just feel like you're the comfort person. And it hurts his feelings. Like, bottom line, he's like, it just hurts. And I've been there when the tides change. And, you know, that's what I kept reminding him. Like, the tides will change. It's not going to always be this way. He loves you. Yeah. It's just how he is right now. Yeah. And when the tides do change, there is that pang of like, but that's, I think, more our ego than anything else, right?
Yep.
Like, that's...
These things happen. The kids go through phases like this. And it's about just continuously thinking of those needs and doing whatever works for you and your family to meet them. It looks different for everyone. Yeah.
One other thing, last one on attachment, and I don't even know if this qualifies as attachment, but like, is there a reason, do you know, has it been studied, why some mothers feel that instant bond and some don't? Yeah, a lot of people ask this question.
It's a great question. So there's a lot of things that contribute to that. What we do know is it's quite normal for some moms to feel that instant connection. And sometimes connecting is a behavior. Yeah. Sometimes you have to develop routines, develop little, I wouldn't say inside jokes because they don't even smile yet. But yeah, you get to know them. You have things that you do together, and then it gradually develops. And both are normal and okay. And again, right now we're talking about the newborn phase. This isn't the attachment yet. They're not like, yes, they're developing an attachment with you, but they're not consolidating their attachment style for many, many months later. You have so much time to get in your groove, find your new self, and then respond to your baby's needs. But it's definitely, and I think hopefully it's becoming more known that it's totally okay to not feel that instant connection.
It's interesting because I think that this is something people should continue to talk about, because I think there's a lot of shame when you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that holds people back a lot from talking about it. So it's this kind of like double-edged sword. But for me, I felt that connection the first time. And I remember having a very close friend afterwards, and I really like the way she put it, where she said she didn't experience that instant bond. And she's like, there was no doubt that I loved this human with all of my heart, but they put him on my chest, and I was like, who are you? Like, you're a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta know. I have no idea who you are. I gotta get to know you. I will protect you. I love you, and I already know that inherently, but I don't know who you are. And she said it felt like they just put some random person on her chest and was like, okay, and now you're supposed to be connected to this human. She's like, what the actual F?
Yeah.
And I beat myself up a little bit, and I've mentioned this very sporadically, and I did get a lot of heat from some people when I did mention it, but I did feel a different connection with my second. I didn't feel the same way I felt with my first during his newborn phase, and that doesn't mean I loved either kid more. It's just, it was a different experience.
Yeah.
And I think especially, I don't know if you thought this with your second, but like, you've created this relationship over a certain amount of time with your first, that then to go back to the newborn, like meeting someone for the first time, I'm like, I kind of got to get to know you.
Like, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
It's so valid. And it's like, also in the newborn phase, you don't really get a lot back from them.
None.
They're not smiling at you.
They're a stack of potatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think what I wish we could re-emphasize to people who don't feel that instant connection is like, nothing is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the professional, but like, from all of my friends who have experienced this and what I've witnessed, the relationship grows and gets to the same place. It's just a different starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you can easily, and you probably have developed a secure relationship with that kid who you didn't immediately feel this wonderful attachment connection the second they're slapped on your chest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wild time. They get thrown. It's just like, what the it's crazy to just have this like belief that we're all supposed to feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I want to get into maternal mental health and its impact on children. This is something I care very passionately about, and is why I'm so adamant about prioritizing time for myself, which I've been kind of shit at lately, and it shows. But I truly believe, I mean, the saying exists, you can't pour from an empty cup. Like, the reason I do everything I do for my mental health is so that I can show up as the best version of myself as a mom for my kids. And I think that that's the greatest thing we can do for our children. So I guess my first question is, what has had the largest impact that you've seen in research on children when it comes to maternal mental health? Like, what has been the largest impact on the kids?
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of different things that we can study when it comes to maternal mental health. So there's like maternal trauma history is frequently studied. Depressive symptoms and anxiety are probably the most commonly studied ones. Yeah. And I think one thing to know is like, yes, that can impact attachment, obviously. For many reasons. It also impacts the development of the infant stress response system. So if you think about it from an evolutionary point of view, we come into the world as babies, and we need to like maximize the chance that we're going to have babies, maximize that reproductive potential. Just basic like evolutionary theory comes in. The baby has to sense, how stressful is my environment going to be? Because if it's stressful, I better develop my stress system to be on high alert so that I can be prepared for threat. Obviously, this is a subconscious kind of thing. And so it happens during pregnancy. So it's kind of prenatal programming of the infant stress system. And then in the early postnatal period has a big impact. And then when they develop their attachment style, like that is like the major developmental task of an infant, is like attaching with their primary caregiver and developing this strong emotional bond. And when that isn't secure, that's further going to impact their stress system. Now, I don't say this to scare anyone, because as I said, we all have what it takes to have a secure attachment. And if we just keep in mind those needs and do whatever feels right for us, like probably we will have one. But maternal mental health is that important. You are setting up your child's stress response system, which then goes on to predict their mental health down the line. So it's not only about...
So daunting.
It's daunting, but we can't let that perfectionistic, I have to be the best parent, the perfect parent, impact what we do or how we feel about ourselves, because there's so much that's out of our control. And there's also so much that's in our control.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this research is that it shows that when people learn about this education on attachment, these two needs, and they think about it like that, and they recognize their shark music, they create this, I'm trying to phrase it so not in technical terms, but basically... they create this thing where like something goes and it blocks the expression of genes related to dysregulated stress physiology in the baby. So we have the power to literally block the intergenerational transmission of depression, anxiety, stress system dysregulation. It's really cool the power we have.
Do we do that?
So literally by trying not to be the perfect parent, by relaxing into the parenting role, by trusting the research, like the research shows, you have to recognize your shark music, or at least try to know the needs. Are they looking for independence, exploration, or are they looking for connection? And just do whatever works for you. Take care of your mental health. And when you make mistakes, as we all do, you just say sorry, you point out the mistake, and then you go back to meeting their needs.
Okay.
That's how you do it.
Because, I mean, it's really interesting as someone who struggles with their mental health. And it's evident if you take a, broader lens of all of the women in my family, their themes. I think about and this is where my perfectionist as a parent comes in. Like, I think about what triggers me and my anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's very evident that it's because that was my standard in my upbringing. And so then I almost beat myself up because I'm trying to perfect the home for my children so that they're not negatively impacted. Like, that's where I find it very daunting. Even though I'm trying my best, even though I'm trying to meet their needs, like, my brain still goes there.
Yeah.
So as a naturally and underlyingly anxious person with that buzzing, what can we try to do? Or as in a depressive episode, are there tangible things other than identifying whether it's the need for independence or comfort, to cultivate a safe space for our children so that it's not impacting them? Does that exist?
So look, again, we don't want to fall through the myth of we have all this control over our child's outcome. If we don't get our mental health in check right now, this is going to screw up their stress systems. No, that's absolutely not it. But it is important to take care of your mental health. It's not about let's meet the child's needs. It's about the parent's needs and the child's needs. You can't meet the child's needs if you don't meet yours. So you already know, take care of your mental health. Do the things that fuel you. You said you're doing all these things to feel good. You go to therapy. Yes, that's a privilege. Yeah. But there are other things,
Walking outside, meditating, journaling. There are things that I absolutely put money towards for my mental health, and then there are many things in my mental health toolkit that are free.
Yes.
That bring you joy.
Ask for help. Yeah. Get help from people. And when your shark music tells you should be able to do this yourself, no. Notice it. Quiet it down. Take care of yourself, because that's literally on a physiological level, not just like an emotional level or behavioral level. Like, it's changing your child's physiology to protect them. When you take care of yourself and you show up, they see the intent. They see what's going on behind the surface. If they fall and hurt themselves and you're like, oh, it's okay, don't worry. But in your mind, you're like, oh, shoot, I probably screwed that up. I'm such a bad parent. I should have been watching him. They're going to pick up on that. They're not going to be as comforted than if you say, well, there you go, another screw up. We all screw up 1,000 times a day. Here's another one. Here's your Band-Aid, buddy.
Yeah.
Go back to run. So it's about being easy on ourselves and remembering, like, what I always come back to when my shark music goes on is probably I have a secure relationship with them. The majority of people do. Like, probably they're just fine. Also, so many people have mental health histories. So many people's parents struggled and they had challenging childhoods that they want to change. And when we're too fixated on changing that, then it's that big mistake of trying to be the perfect parent.
I also kind of just believe that, like, no matter what, something's gonna fuck. Like, no one is gonna just get through life and not have something that fucks them up in some way.
Yeah.
And in a really sick and twisted way that kind of provides me comfort, where it's like, my kid's gonna go to therapy for something that I did, no matter what I do.
Yeah.
Like, and the reason I say that is because I talk about this with my friends, where, like, if we were raised two very different ways, where, like, my parents were really tough on me and hard on me and, like, demanded excellence, and especially in terms of sports, and her parents just told her that, like, she could do anything and she was great no matter what, and, like, you're the best in the world, like, whatever. And now we look at it, the two of us, we have these conversations, and she's like, I just expect everyone to praise me all the time because, like, I was just always told I was the best, and, like, if I don't get something I want or something, it's hard for her. She's like, but wait, I deserve the world. And for me, it's like, I'm really hard on myself because that critic was instilled in my brain at a young age. And so we look at each other and we're like, well, no matter what, the parents were trying to do their best in both cases, and maybe they were opposites, and yet we're still fucked in a way.
Yeah.
It's not. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I get what you're saying. So no one's perfect, right?
Yeah.
We're going to make mistakes, and trying to be perfect is going to make us make even more mistakes. And so hopefully you remember this piece is that attachment's all about rupture and repair. And repair. Just do the repair.
Right,
Rupture,
like, you're going to rupture.
Repair. You're going to rupture. And this parenting culture puts more pressure on us to not rupture. There was this, and I think they're wonderful parents. There was this set of parents that I work with clinically, and they come and they're like, my kid I can't remember what it was. My kid did something bad, and then he said sorry, and then we were so upset because they're not allowed to say sorry. They're not supposed to say sorry.
Why would
they said they're supposed to say, I made you feel frustrated and I regret having done what I did, and I feel that I don't want you to feel frustrated. Like, that sounds a lot like a weird way to say sorry to me.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of parenting post did you read that said that? And they're like, oh, we're so relieved. Now we can just use the word sorry. Now our kid
Were we not allowed to use the word sorry?
Apparently, somebody out there is saying that.
No,
so...
I mean, the internet is great for so many things. So many things. But it's just overwhelming. And I think especially as a parent, I felt this way before I was a parent in different worlds, like stages of my life, where I felt like I was never doing the exact right workout I needed to be doing for my body, or I was never eating the exact optimization foods. Like, now with parenting, one thing I do feel grateful for is I have, even though I personally sometimes try to perfect, I have quieted the outside noise where I do trust that gut.
Yeah.
But it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because you're getting thrown literal polar opposite opinions at you the second you open your phone. And I'm not even talking as being like a public figure. I just mean consuming content.
Yeah.
And I just really wish every parent listening to this can take your advice of, like, you can't be perfect. You just have to keep trying and, like, trust your gut.
Yeah. And honestly, your gut, that is perfect enough. It's all about good enough parenting. Remember that 40%. These researchers tore these moms apart. I'm telling you, it gave me so much anxiety before I became a parent. I'm like, what if they saw me on the screen?
No, really? Like,
horrible.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as you were talking about this. Who signed up to be in these like studies?
So, well, I mean, they're contributing to the, I don't think they
didn't know what was happening behind the scenes.
I mean, they weren't like, it's part of these like coding systems, right? So it's for the good of like the parenting literature. And hopefully now they can help all your listeners know, they responded only to 40% of their child's cues, like correctly or whatever to their child's satisfaction. And that got them the secure attachment.
I also think they should hopefully encourage more of that, something I believe in deeply, of like the independent playing. Of you don't need to be like next to them 24, obviously being in the same surroundings so that they're like safe, but they encouraging them to like be creative and be bored and do stuff on their own instead of constantly. I catch myself sometimes like constantly trying to be like, what about this? What are you doing? And I'm like, can I just let the kid chill?
Yeah.
Like, why am I asking him 10,000 questions? I get bothered when he asks me 10,000 questions. Of course he's not going to enjoy this. Yeah. Maybe this is why he asked me 10,000 questions.
And that's the shark music, right? And it's coming from this noise of all these parenting approaches. Like, you must validate every emotion. You must fix their every emotion. Don't set limits on them. Just let them explore their emotions. That's like permissive parenting. A secure attachment is made through the parent being bigger, stronger, wiser, but kind. It's made through the parent taking charge when they should, setting boundaries and limits, and validating emotions. And showing their kid, life is hard. Like, I'm not going to fix this emotion, but I will be with you through this emotion. I'm here, but I'm not going to give you candy for breakfast when you cry that you want candy for breakfast.
Were you inside my house this week?
Yeah, my house too.
Yep. Yeah, it's constant of wanting certain things. And we're big on the word never right now. His favorite word. I am never going to do that. I'm like, okay, I'm never going to eat breakfast. Like, you're going to eat breakfast, buddy. What advice would you give to someone who maybe has struggled with their mental health, whether it be through pregnancy or postpartum, and now they're trying, like, I don't like the term claw back, but trying to like repair, I guess. Are there tangible things that you would encourage these parents to do?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, be kind to yourself. Like, you're in a better place now. Wonderful. The attachment, if it's not already secure, which again, it probably is, it's going to resolve itself. These aren't like between 12 to 18 months is like a big point for the kids kind of showing that style they consolidated, but it can change like for the better. It could change for the worse. Like, people go through rough periods in their life, like everyone does. Yeah. And sure, you might not meet the child's needs to that extent. The child might feel, your affect change, and then that might give a brief disruption, and then things kind of resolve. You're feeling more back to yourself. You're getting some help. You're doing things for yourself. The attachment, it's naturally going to resolve. Like, I hope what people take out of this is like confidence in themselves that they have the tools. You don't need to be the perfect parent. You need to, for less than half the time, just so your child perceives you as consistent, not even constantly, but consistently respond to their needs. That's all you need to do, and that's good enough.
Okay, well, this was really helpful for me personally, just to like have these reminders and to get the encouragement I needed. But I think this will be so incredibly helpful for my listeners. I didn't actually even ask you, like, can we plug anything of yours? Do you want to plug anything?
I mean, I'm like a clinician, like I'm like a therapist. So if anybody is in Ontario, then it makes sense to see you. So yeah, we can like link my website.
Okay, perfect. Everything will be in the show notes if you're in Ontario and you're looking for someone and you love what you heard. But thank you so much. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for being a part of the community. And thank you for hopefully instilling a lot of confidence in fellow parents. I appreciate it.
Thanks.